my story feels so far from this desert landscape that we're in right now that you could almost forget that it ever happened. But the truth is, you really never forget your first time, your first love. And for me, that first love was dogs. Ever since I was really little, I love dogs, and not in the obsessive American dress your dog up for Halloween, sit for family portraits, put it in a stroller to go for walks kind of way. No, I wanted to be the dog. So much so that my mom would frequently find me behind the couch in our living room when I was little with all of my stuffed animal dogs shoved up my shirt, pretending to birth and give and raise my puppies. To her great relief, that I grew out of that. But then I moved on to wanting to become a dog encyclopedia author. I was hell-bent on this. I would just copy my dog fact books into a journal, planning to sell my original work and, just show the world my passion and my vast knowledge of everything canine. Then I learned about plagiarism and my dreams were shattered. So in those dog fact books though, one time I happened across this word, Iditarod. And I was like, what is this? And I remember walking to the public library with my third grade class trying to remember how it's spelled, I-D-I-T-A-R-O-D, I-D-I-T-A-R-O-D, and I was just going over it so I could type it into the search engines and check out every single book that they had on this magical 1,000-mile sled dog race across Alaska by a dog team. I got all those books and I was hooked. So now my childhood dream of being a dog mother now became being a dog musher. And somehow, despite the fact that I'm a native Arizonan, a cactus hugger to the core, that never wore off. I didn't ever see snow until I was probably 18 years old, but I wanted to be a dog musher every single year up until then. So at 19 years old, when you're old enough to make crazy and sometimes stupid decisions, I went to the internet to say, I'm going to make this dream a reality. I'm going to do it. And I happened across this website that was essentially Craigslist for dog mushers. It exists. You can buy harnesses, snow booties for your dog's feet, sleds, you name it. But what I was most interested in was the help wanted ads. Mushers have anywhere between 15 and 115 dogs at a time, maybe even more. And all those dogs have to eat, they all have to run, they all have to poop. So they're always looking for help. And at this point, I wanted to do this so bad that I didn't even search. I didn't even shop around for mushers. I picked the first guy on the page. He was a 72-year-old man named Stan, lived in the northern forests of Quebec, all by himself in his cabin with 35 dogs in his dog yard, 36 kilometers from the nearest village. Yes, village. I emailed Stan and said, I am wildly, crazily interested in scooping your dog poop. And he said, great, come on down, come on up. And so we made an arrangement. It was really quite simple. I wasn't going to be paid, but I was going to scoop poop and feed dogs and run dogs. And in exchange, he would give me a room in his cabin for 6 months. And he would teach me everything he knew. So I managed to convince the organization that was funding my undergrad at ASU that this was a study abroad opportunity. I was a French major. I was Quebec. It made sense, and somehow they agreed. So about a month from the time that I first emailed Stan, I found myself clawing my way through Canadian customs to make my, to follow my destiny. The custom agents were almost positive that I was either a runaway or that I was being trafficked. But I managed to convince them that I was going to live with Stan of my own volition. I didn't tell them that my mom was absolutely terrified and that all of my friends either thought that I was going to die from the elements or be killed by Stan and just like When Stan picked me up in the airport to Montreal, we got into his truck, and as we drove, it was just me and him, as we drove farther from humanity, deeper into the forest and higher up his mountain road, I remember thinking to myself very distinctly, if ever you were going to shit your pants for fear, this is the time. But when we arrived in his dog kennel, in parts, it was already dark, and I got out of the truck, and I was assaulted by the sound of 35 barking sled dogs and mountain air that was just way too fresh for my nose that was used to a desert phoenix smog. And I went to bed that first night, and it was impossible to distinguish whether the butterflies in my stomach were from excitement or if it was just fear that I was going to be killed and fed to the sled dogs. But spoiler alert, I wasn't murdered. I'm still here. The next morning, Stan introduced me to my charges, who had names like Cosmo and Tanya and Bergen and Blue and Mary, Frodo, Pippin, Sam, and my personal favorite, Hinto. And I got into the routine for the next 6 months of feed, clean, water, run, rest, do it all again the next day. And until I lived in Quebec for those 6 months, I had never spent that much time outside in my life consistently. I've always loved the desert, but this was constant being outside. So I had to really get used to this thing called winter. The first time it was negative 45 degrees outside, I thought I was going to die. Like, you actually feel your body trying to survive at negative 45 degrees. Because it's not like as a musher you can just go in your cabin and, enjoy a hot toddy when it's too cold to go outside. No, you have dogs to feed and poop to scoop, and you have to exercise. And that's exactly what we did. We would hook up 16 dogs at a time to either Stan's ATV before the snow arrived, which was like 5 minutes. He was there the rest of the time I was there. Or to his sled or to his snow machine, and we would just go whipping through the forest, run, come back, unhook those dogs, and hook up another team. That was what we did all the time. And all of that work, the feedings, the poop scooping, there's so much poop. 35 dogs make a lot of poop. Don't ever complain if you only have just one, because 35 dogs make just buckets and buckets. And all those dogs need straw in their houses, and if we're going to talk about the poop, you really have to talk about the pee, because the boy dogs have this amazing way of shooting their pee directly into their dog houses. Usually right after you change the straw, so it would just form this like pee-sicle all on the inside of their house. And you would have to chip that off. I spent hours chipping pea-sicles off their houses. But it was all worth it for that moment that you got to stand on the runners of a sled. Because in those moments, with dogs out in front of you, they loved you, you cared for them, they would do anything for you. And what they wanted to do most in this whole world was run, and you got to do it with them. In those moments, my childhood dream truly was realized, not to be a dog musher, but to be the dog. Because we were kindred spirits, we were one pack together, and we wanted the same things in life. We wanted food to eat, a house to sleep in, and a job to do, and boy did we do it all winter long. When it was time for me to go home, because my 6 months were up, I left to finish my 2 years at ASU to get my degree with the plan of moving to Alaska the minute I graduated. Fate so had it that my last semester at ASU, I found myself on a dating website, and I wound up picking my husband exactly like I picked my dog mushing mentor. First guy on the page. Within 3 months, we were engaged. We got engaged in a forest. I mean, made sense. But my fiance knew that Alaska was still part of the deal. A week before our wedding, I went to Alaska for the first time ever. I finally got to set foot in that sacred state to finally participate in the Iditarod. Not as a competitor yet, but as a volunteer. I got to spend a week out on the trail, helping the dog mushers, helping the dogs, sleeping in an airplane hangar in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, at a checkpoint, just helping the race. I got to meet all of my favorite mushers, and I felt like my foot was very solidly in the door. I was going to be the first Arizonan to complete the Iditarod. A week after our wedding, my husband and I moved to Alaska to work for an adventure tour company. He drove a bus and gave tours in a bus, and I, of course, worked in the dog yard with 273 Alaskan Huskies, giving cart rides to tourists all summer long with my own loner team of 16 dogs. Just shortly before we were supposed to leave Alaska to go work for the grandson of the man who started the Iditarod, to work for his dog team that winter, I found out I was pregnant, and we decided to move home to Arizona to start our young family. And I'm on a different adventure now. I will be the first Arizonan to complete the Iditarod, but I'm on the adventure of raising 2 kids with a full-time job, dually enrolled in grad school and a teacher certification program adventure. That's my adventure right now. And I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but there's days where it's friggin' hard. There's days where there's been too many tantrums over the graham cracker breaking the wrong way. There's papers to write. There's IEPs due with just not enough time to do any of it. And it's in those moments that I close my eyes and I go back up to that northern forest in Quebec with those 35 sled dogs, 36 kilometers from the nearest village. Because I just go to where I can smell that mountain air again, feel the warmth of my favorite sled dog's fur between my fingers, and hear us all howling at the moon together as one pack. I'm on a different adventure now, but that one is never far from the front of my mind because you never forget your first time. Thank you.